Okay. Hello, and welcome to the Slava Heroyam podcast. I am Travis Hightower. You are going to be watching this on February 1st of the year of our Lord, 2026. And if this is the first time to this podcast, it is the 21st episode of it. I have two episodes that need to be kind of re-edited, redone. But the premise of this channel is I'm a veteran, Air Force veteran, who flew on AWACS E3 back there as an air battle manager for Iraqi freedom and enduring freedom. And I started out analyzing the air war of Ukraine, and now I focus on the individual stories of individual heroes coming from the ground rather than most of the geopolitics that you'll get. Because where the war is going to be won or lost is going to be with the individual. And as always, we'll cover a charity that will dig into it, show you its legitimacy a little bit so that you can help. We'll talk about stopping the human safari and spreading awareness for that. And we've got a little bit extra to talk about this week. So now that you know what we're going to talk about, let's get into a memorial of some of the folks that we've lost to human safari. If you don't know what human safari is, that is where Russians hunt down civilians with drones, sometimes armed with grenades, sometimes armed with strap-on explosives, and they run the drone into the people. It's a horrible event, and this is in addition to all the large-scale drones, the Shirad drones and the cruise missiles that attack Ukraine pretty much daily. In the top left corner of the screen, you'll find a QR code that'll take you to a documentary on human safari. It's something that we talk about every episode. All right, first up is a victim of something different than the bombs, but the still no less a terror campaign to shut down Ukraine power during its winter. Kyiv has been without power, with spurts of having a little bit of power in some places for more than 2 weeks now. And we lost, the world lost. And she was a Holocaust survivor. She, tough as bones lady, but sometimes it gets down to negative 20 degrees in Kyiv. And over the weekend, with no electricity, no heat, unfortunately, the world lost another Holocaust survivor. And so we remember Yevgenia. I hope I'm saying your name right. But her family mourns her. Then another story that this is Valerie, 54, or no, Valerie is 54, is the man, and Valentina, 52. They're a married couple in the Sumy region trying to evacuate the occupied village of Grabovsk. Grabovsk, Grabovske, Grabovsk. I don't know if you can just sound out Ukrainian. One of these days, I'm going to commit to learning Ukrainian as part of a class. I'll be able to say these words better. But if you know how to pronounce this town, which is in the Sumy region, please inform me. Let me know in the comments. Sumy region is in northern Ukraine that was kind of invaded by Russia as a response when tried to take pressure off Kursk when Ukraine invaded the Kursk region. So they were hiding in a basement for several weeks. The Ukrainian forces were going to try to get them out of there. And a lot of the charities that we sponsor on this channel or try to spread awareness of are folks that try to help get people out and evacuate from occupied territory, just like Valerie and Valentina. So Valentina was sick, and he was pulling her on a sled, trying to, in the cover of night, and a Russian drone struck. Killed Valentina, and the husband stayed with her, pretty much wanting to die with her. And so the Russians obliged that by sending 2 more drones, one to see where he was, and one to attack. So you have to remember that they're not making mistakes here. They're watching these people walk for 7 kilometers, knowing they're civilians, and going after them. So we'll remember Valentina and Valerie, not much older than me and my wife. And finally, this week we remember another hero, combat medic. I only know her as Alexandra. She's a Ukrainian combat medic. She was killed evacuating wounded defenders. And I'm wondering if it's part of this same story that I'm about to tell you about. So We're talking a lot about people trying to be evacuated, and the Russians are trying to kill anyone trying to escape this situation. It is very much a terror campaign, but that when you're trying to evacuate people and wounded soldiers as a combat medic, you lose people like this. So you could call this a combat death if you wanted. She was in the combat zone evacuating wounded soldiers, but she's also in a vehicle that the Russians know are a vehicle full of wounded. It makes you wonder why they even bother with prisoner exchanges if they're just going to kill wounded people. But at any rate, Alexandra was killed, and I'm going to switch now to tell you the rest of this story. So I just showed you Alexandria. This is Alexandria's friend, another combat medic, Nadia Bila. And there's Nadia. And I do this. There we go. So this is Nadia, Alexandria's friend. The story is that they were trying to save a man's life. They couldn't, get an IV into him. They finally got an IV into him. They got him stabilized. He was a wounded soldier. There she is in the trenches. And Alexandria got the wounded soldier into the evacuation, and they drove off. And then the entire ambulance was hit, and everyone was killed. So this is her just after hearing that everyone had been killed, and after they had just saved a couple lives, and they were going to be okay as long as they could get them back, to safe zone, further from the front. And then a drone struck and killed that vehicle. And she writes a letter in an article that says that in the past she would have worked on Russian prisoners to save their lives as well, but after that was the last straw for her. She's not going to save Russian prisoners anymore. She's just going to end their suffering outright. So the bitterness that this war is creating is going to last for generations. It just gets to me every time that we have the power to end this, but our democracies worldwide are weak, and the people need to realize it and take control back. We need to not fear nuclear blackmail and do what needs to be done to end this. Otherwise, any goodwill left for peace with neighbors is going to be gone, along with entire generations of men and women. It's not going to end with some kind of business deal. So there's a lot to speak up on, but the reason I'm doing this is everything going on in America is important, but it's all related to this as well. And we will get into that a little bit more shortly. But let's show another organization that I trust. Speaking of evacuations, Rescue Now is a 501(c) charity that does evacuations. And I've gone over how to make sure that charities are good. This one has donation options to a specific bank account. When you donate, it also has donation through PayPal. But here are the bank codes. And what they did is they have foundation policy. And in Ukrainian and in English, they have all their documentation. I'm not going to open up all their documentation and bore you with that now, but they have their policies, their anti-corruption policies, their transparency, and they're connected to Blue Check. Oops, I need to share this tab instead. So here it is, their policies, put it on a drive. It's okay for some charities to be small, and this is a small operation with an ambulance that, they do several things. They find a safe place for children to feel safe and psychologically play, have a good place to play that is offline, so they're not on the internet, but to bring some normalcy to their life. And there's a kid that has a quote in here somewhere that, what superpower would you like to have? They talked to this 5-year-old, flying, but I already knew how to do that even before. Now I want to make water flow from my hands so I could put out the fires from the missiles in people's homes. This is what these children are growing up with, and they're not in a third world country. They're in civilized Western society, freedom society. Anyway, rapid response. They can, like a lot of these charities, they bring supplies. You can volunteer and you can donate. And they say every $20 you donate saves someone's life. If it's just some drugs, it's, that they need, they have a program that watches over elderly people. Well, this is an organization that's also connected to Blue Check. Blue Check is an organization run that is a hub, and it includes Hollywood actor Liev Schreiber as an American. And so what I'm going to be bringing you the next several weeks are organizations that are part of Blue Check, because those are very confirmed and transparent charity organizations with 501c3 charters. All right, so this is our organization of the week because they handle a lot of rescue, and it's really easy to remember. Rescue Now, rescuenow.ngo is where you can find this website. rescuenow.ngo. All right, so I wrote an article this week. This is our hero of the week, Colonel Ivan Voronych. Colonel Ivan Voronych was taken from us last summer, but he had been an intelligence officer for Ukraine since the mid-90s. And the reason that I picked him as the hero of the week is because he is the stark counterpart. He's the stark counterpart to Greg Bovino. And I'm not going to show the picture for Greg Bovino. If you don't know who Greg Bovino looks like, then you're someone who, I'm glad you're paying attention to this podcast, but you need to be paying more attention to the news. And if I ever do a sponsor, I hope I also do a sponsor for groundnews.com. Stand by on that. I'll tell you about Ground News at the end of this podcast, but that's a really important way to make sure you're getting an unbiased look at the news. But Colonel Ivan Voronych can be considered Greg Bovino's counterpart, although he is more like the FBI director. But even more than that, he ran an outfit called Alpha Group. Now, the SBU is kind of like the FBI and Homeland Security, and the Border Patrol, all rolled into one in Ukraine. And now that it has oversight, and we talked about oversight and transparency last week, he was one of the gentlemen that was, able to clean house, get rid of the Soviet and KGB influence, and start something new and trustworthy for Ukraine. And he's responsible for a lot of the generals that were taken out in the first weeks of the full-scale invasion, and providing intelligence that did that. And he also took out his Alpha Group under his command also took out a key target in the anti-terror organization in 2015. You had this lead separatist, one of the separatist leaders, whose name was Arsen Motorola Pavlov. So there's Motorola Pavlov. And one of the things as a reminder here is that from 2014 really to 2018-ish, during the anti-terror operations, I don't know if there was a quiet period after 2018. There was ceasefires that lasted. But you had people of Donetsk and Luhansk that thought they were fighting for their own separate nations. And that's something that this guy told them. He said, we're going to establish the Republic of Donetsk. And the Alpha Group took that guy out, and with it, a big-time propaganda leader who was really kind of stoking the flames of revolution, getting people to believe that the Euromaidan was some kind of big coup, rather than an ousting of an authoritarian. And that line of truth is something we're going to have to struggle with here in the United States, where it's coming. There'll be a day when the people are already standing up in constant protest, and there'll be a day when the Trump administration has to flee, and who knows where they'll flee to. This guy, Viktor Yanukovych, he fled to Russia. Is the Trump administration going to have a place to go run to? I don't know. I'd like to get a picture where I'll just do this. Viktor Yanukovych ran to Russia. His SBU needed house cleaning. ICE will need house cleaning too. It'll need to be, we talked about last week how to disband it and rebuild, because only rebuilding trust and transparency will preserve democracy for the long run. Unfortunately, when you have people that you can trust, they become a target. And this isn't playing sound. So Unfortunately, here is the assassination. Guy runs up with a pistol, shoots him in his own parking lot. People run. But this is the kind of thing you're looking at another country and you go, of course, that happens in other countries where someone just comes up and shoots someone in the street. In this case, a very high value target for the Russians, because he was someone that the people could trust and gunned down. Now, eventually, that killer was caught, and he had a woman handler, and they were longtime sleeper agents. Let's see. They're part of a sleeper agent cell that was formed by the KGB in the U.S. And there are still sleeper agents here. You'd think they would be deactivated because the Soviet Union no longer existed, but these cells still exist worldwide. And one of the cells was activated in Ukraine, and they killed that guy. And then the new SBU went and avenged their leader pretty quickly, catching both the assassin and his handler. And they gunned them down in a gunfight when they cornered them in their house. So some real-world espionage and spy stuff going there. But whoever takes control of new ICE, I think our Homeland Security should be reorganized and have a division of checks and balances within itself. And I think the Ukraine Anti-Corruption Bureau is a good example to some of the things that we can do. So that's some news from this summer that I didn't cover because I've been talking to fighter pilots and I've been talking to frontline troops, and we've been talking to people that run the charities that on the front lines. By the way, that organization, Rescue Now, also rescues and delivers to Kherson. But Colonel Ivan Voronych, Hero of the Week, there's been a lot of news lately in the last few weeks to months of Zelensky reorganizing his intelligence leadership. Sometimes, as always, anytime a decision like that gets made, it comes with a lot of criticism. But we'll be covering that in the future. And coming up this week is a real important week that's been going on since the full-scale invasion began. Next week is Ukrainian Week in Washington, D.C. And Ukrainian Week is really sort of a cultural, political exchange where religious leaders meet and are involved. And so it is an opportunity to see how, Ukraine as a Christian nation and the United States, or I don't know if Ukraine considers itself a Christian nation, but they have a lot of Russian Orthodox and they have a lot of Christianity there for sure. But the Christian right in the United States, one of the reasons that they are manipulated over to supporting Russia is because for some reason we see Russia as this protector of Christian values, when really, Ukraine has plenty of Christian values and spirituality to protect in itself. So this Ukraine event has high-profile people attending: Lindsey Graham, Mike Pence, Richard Blumenthal. You might not like these guys, but Mike Pence demonstrated loyalty to the Constitution over party. Lindsey Graham hasn't demonstrated that kind of loyalty yet, but he has demonstrated a genuine concern for Ukraine. And I think that's because he is part of the old benign empire where we believed in protecting the freedom of others, and he's not a populist. And Richard Blumenthal, I'm sure is similar to those two gentlemen. There's some of the other people that are going to be there. Former president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko. Really, I've got a friend going to these events. We're going to try to get some sound bites, some interviews. But I'm interested in Putin's attempts to divide Ukraine based on religion. This forum has been going on for 4 years. There's pastors that meet, roundtable meetings, dollar concert, Together to Victory. These are all folks that I think, for all our differences and for all the weaseling around politically, want to see victory for Ukraine rather than some shady deal. So you'll notice a lot of, if you go into more of this, you'll see a lot more Republican leaders and congresswomen involved. And in addition to Democrats who are interested in this, but really this is one of those religious things. So People who bring a little bit of religion into their politics are all going to be there. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, as long as you don't have to be afraid, or it should be something that can define you to be Christian. It just shouldn't define how you govern by forcing others to have what you consider to be your values. And really what we're talking about when you talk differences in Christian values, it seems to be always the LGBTQ issue or abortion. Those are the two issues that our own politics has used to divide us unnecessarily. So we'll be talking a little bit and trying to discover ways that Putin tried to divide Ukraine culturally, because I'm sure that some of these folks, especially the Ukrainian pastors and folks, probably have a bit of an answer to that. So that's next week. We'll write a little bit about religion strife in Ukraine on Monday. Try to find a hero of the week. I don't know who that's going to be yet, but we are done with the SBU series for now. I'll return to intelligence warfare at some point in the future, because it's really important, especially when we're talking about things like Starlink and how that was cut off, and how intelligence played a crucial role in the invasion of Kursk not going as far as it could have. So we'll put on pause for that, but I want to get into heroes and stories that come out of Ukraine week, because even though that's been going on since the full-scale invasion, I haven't covered it yet. And hopefully the war is not still going on by next year, but Ukraine week, even after victory, is something that can continue. Just like this channel will continue after victory to try to keep you plugged in to the rebuild and reconstruction after the war. But until then, we'll be marching toward victory. Glory to the heroes and those who protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. Slava Ukraini, and Heroyam Slava.